Welcome everybody, and as we said for today's topic, we will start with OT cybersecurity. I'll do a short introduction, tell you who's talking, and just before we go into the main topics of the day, I would also give some attention to why we think security needs a bigger picture than just one of the sub-items that you could put out in security. It really is important that we have a proper holistic security vision and where you can place the various elements of security like cybersecurity. So there's also something to give it a good place. We will start with that big picture first. Then because 2020 has been a crazy year so far, we do want to give you some tips and tricks around security that is quite important, which is really going around the globe right now. So we really need to have a short amount of time to look at what is working from home, what is a good security there, a little bit about the security awareness, which is very, very important in these times right now, both in IT and OT, and I will show you that later. We'll have a short amount of time that we also use to look into ERP security, because there's a lot of things that are changing in various systems. So I do want to point out and give you some tips and tricks there as well. And of course, the main section of today will be on OT cybersecurity and what we can see there. What are the most important things you want to look into that are protecting your systems against any cyber attacks. And after that, we will have the time for some questions and answers. So let's first have a look here. So I'm Armand, working for now 2 years within ATS, been in security since 1999 already, and I really brought in my own team of experts to form an expert division within ATS Global. And already within the time that we've been here, we are expanding now, making it a multi-divisional team across the globe to really bring security to our customers and unburden them on the subject of security. Because this is really something that we are truly looking into, and that is also why we have created a holistic security vision. We want to bring security from both boardroom all the way down to the shop floor. So if you take that into account, you really have the opportunity to bring transparency to security, where it often is a very complex thing. We like to bring more transparency to it, to take into account the whole big picture. And that also brings in that you take a good look at both the external threats and the internal risks of fraud, for instance. There's also two different sides of the spectrum that you really need to have a good look into to bring proper security to all levels of your organization. So we do that through various things, and I will visualize that a little bit better in this slide, because for us, security really is a people's business. It's not just technology and it's not just systems and tools. It's also very, very, very important to have a good look at how you bring security to the people, make them aware of security, and how you handle the identity lifecycle within your company of everybody who's working there. So at the top left, we really start from the employees' identities, but don't forget you also have different types of identities there. You can have contractors working for you, and also, of course, you have a lot of customers in your systems, customers that might work for you through a business-to-business portal, or you even might have a business-to-customer portal. So those identities you want protected as well, and then you definitely want some proper authorizations for these as well. You can't imagine that would be a customer that could actually see information to the portal that is for one of their competitors or one of the other customers. So from identities, we move into authorizations to make sure that in all your systems, everybody has the proper amount of authorizations, maximizing the way they can work. So the workability is optimized without taking out any of the risks of low security or giving people too broad roles. We do different things on authorizations because, of course, it's not just the roles itself. You also want to have a deeper look in the transactions, etc., that you use in the backends. So we do want some proper authorizations on that as well. And once you bring all that into control for yourselves, you want to stay in control as well. So whenever a user would change, or whenever a business proposal makes it happen that you get a change of your authorizations, you want that properly managed as well, so you have a proper logging on that, and you can really show your auditors at the end of the year that everything went according to the processes as they should be. So that brings you to governance, risk and compliance, where you, for instance, can implement access control. Which also gives you a proper vision for your audit reporting. You get far more tools to help your auditor go quicker to the audit process. You have your questions ready for, they have their questions ready, you have your answers ready. But it also, of course, can help you ad hoc whenever you want to pinpoint some issues on the side of the authorizations and access control. So things like that are really important, and that really brings a whole circle to the part of the identity lifecycle, employee lifecycle as you wish. But of course, then there's a big part of cybersecurity still left. This is why we have the bottom left corner in there. It is super important, of course, that we have proper cybersecurity for all our systems. And this goes for both OT systems, ERP systems, so everything behind your IT, and to bring that attention to the level of security that you currently have in your business, you could actually use something like, for instance, penetration testing to check what the level of security right now is and where your vulnerabilities are. You can do that specifically through pen testing or through various kinds of assessments that you could also have done, and we will discuss that a little bit later on as well. But this then brings you to a full vision of security going through all the items of both your identities and your cybersecurity systems. So the goal of this, of course, is that the people can work and have maximum availability of the systems, that they are aware of what security means, so that information and data doesn't spill. You don't want anything on the street that is really important to you, because IP for a company is one of the most valuable things, of course, that you want to protect. Once that security behavioral comes to the people, they can also work with all the processes that you have much easier. So the synergy there is really created. And of course, that will really then brings everything together. So you have people, process and technology working closely together in a proper harmony, increasing your security just simply through proper behavior, and not just by implementing only some tools and that work in the back end for you. You really want to have your entire company working in a secure way. And that's why we also not just say we have a vision on security, we also like to test that the goal of security really is reached. So that on our security vision in total. For the four most important parts for today, of course, what's happening in 2020. We got a very important part on working from home, IT and OT security awareness, ERP security and OT cybersecurity. So let's go straight into that. So as a company, you have some technological challenges, of course. Working from home can bring in some issues around IT infrastructure, because you really want to know that your systems can handle all the large numbers of people working from home, because they're no longer working from your business network, they're all connecting to your business network, and that really brings in a different type of load. So you want to make sure that not just your IT infrastructure is up to this task, but also the sizing of your systems in the back end are properly sized so they can handle this new type of load. And the same goes, of course, for your telecom. Just think of all the issues that could happen if you have, for instance, if you have voice over IP infrastructure that also uses the same basically the same bandwidth of the connection that goes for your infrastructure and the connection to your infrastructure. So those are things that you need to look into as a company, but also you can help your employees preventing any issues when they work from home. For instance, everybody is aware that phishing, of course, is a thing, but with the new things going around, for instance, there are already a lot of phishing emails going around on the subject of COVID. So you want to update your email filters to filter out those potentially dangerous emails, helping your employees to to work more safely from home. And just one of the very important things that is also often forgotten is how you actually are handling downtime. So you did not foresee, of course, that a lot of people start working from home. Your infrastructure might not be fully capable of handling everything. So what happens if you go down? Are you resilient enough to get your systems back up again in a quick time with maximum efficiency? So take a good look at the preparedness of your company for actual downtime, because this is unscheduled, unplanned. So often there are no fallbacks for this and no safeties yet in a lot of companies. So really is a good tip to take a good look at that. So if you have that, what actually happens if you look from the standpoint of your employees? So on the right side, you don't have to read everything there. This is a flyer that we created for you, actually. So once this meeting is done, we will send you this week an email. It will include this PowerPoint as well, and we will include this flyer separately as well, so you can hand that to your coworkers and your employees, so they can actually have a small handout that they can use and check if there are actual systems at home, like the connections and the hardware that they use, if that is all actually properly safe. The challenges that we see on the left side, we have a few items there that are quite important. We see that quite some companies have a daunting task for them, bringing proper hardware to the employees that are all working from home. And what they start implementing is a bring your own device method. So anybody could use their own private device to work on the company network through a safe connection. However, please take into account that your business hardware is much more secure. You have much more control on that than most of the private hardware that is used. So you really need to make sure that anything that is used from a private standpoint would actually be up to your high security standards. If you can't guarantee that, you are much better off, of course, in giving out the hardware from your own company. So even though it can be a challenge, if you can, don't bring your own device to increase the security of your company. And in that same line, it is really good, of course, if you use a VPN connection to have a safe connection and communication method with your business. But if you don't start with a secure device, a VPN tunnel will not help you in increasing the security for your company. Because if you have an infected device, for instance, on the other end, this VPN tunnel is used the same way as your employees using it. The hacker would use that as well. There's no that it doesn't bring the additional security if you don't start with a secure device. So really put some effort in looking at the devices that are being used to connect to your systems. And what's also important, of course, is not just giving people the technical advantages that you can bring them to work safely, but also be sure that you update your policies accordingly. You need to be able to tell everybody in your company and everybody looking at your company what the preferred methods of communications are, for instance, so nobody starts using the items and apps that you don't want to be used, actually, that might be unsafe or that you don't have control of. So if you have business data going over some form of communication through apps, for instance, that you're not aware of, there's no way you can control it either. So you have to be sure that you update the policy accordingly, when next to the fact that you're also providing the technological possibilities, of course, for those connections and everything. As said, phishing is exploding, so you have to educate the employee as well on what is currently going on. So it's not just one thing like, please don't click on links that you don't trust. Of course, you have to explain also what are the current risks and what are the current subjects that are being used for active phishing attempts. And also, I think it's very important to don't underestimate the size of and the value of your company, even how big or how small you might be with the company, for a hacker. I actually know of a single company that was literally a store that had literally only one laptop and one employee in addition to the owner, and they still were hacked with ransomware to be paid good amount of money to get that single laptop unlocked. So it maybe sounds as a silly example, but really there is no limit to what hackers will do to get a little bit of money, because for them it's just a small effort. If you have a badly protected laptop, it's quite easy for them to find the loopholes in there, get the ransomware on there, and disturb your ways of working. So have a good look into that. So from working from home, we set security awareness. So of course, why is security awareness important? Well, the examples are out there. There are tons of examples where a lot of things might happen that are crippling to companies. Ransomware attacks are, of course, one of the things that are going on right now that are really high in the news. We had some personal experience with that as well. For instance, the second item here, Maastricht University, one of my customers, our team is working there on implementing a proper identity management system. And in the meanwhile, they were hacked. The phishing email was sent to an employee that clicked on a malicious link. Ransomware was installed. It crippled the entire university. Over 30,000 students were unable to get to their materials. So that was really a big issue. And the way everything was set up actually, and the sophistication of the ransomware attack actually made it so far that they actually decided to pay the ransom that was requested just to get everybody back to work again. And this is really something, of course, you don't want. So we will look into the opportunities that you have in protecting your systems better on all levels. So what really is security awareness and why is it important? Well, the first question, why do you need it? I answered straight away. You really want to safeguard your IP, it's one of the most important things, and you want to have your proper availability of your systems, 100% availability. As much as you can, everything in manufacturing needs to go on. So this is really why you have to be aware that security is an important thing of your day-to-day business. So your employees, everybody in the company needs to know and needs to be security aware. You have to explain why security and safety, for instance, in OT are not the same. In OT, safety is a very important item and is highly trained for a lot of people. A lot of companies do a very good job in this, but it's also very important to tell your staff why security is something different. Security really is something that data loss is something different than the safety on the shop floor. But then again, the data loss can happen on that same shop floor. So you really want to educate the people and teach them how to recognize security risks. Through that, they can work securely with the hardware and the software that you provide them. And the beautiful thing that we see that happens then is that when you raise the security awareness, and security awareness is a part of the behavior of everybody in your company, you can actually start to continuously improve your security. And especially in OT, we are very well known with the fact that continuous improvement is an important part of the way how you can work with the company and how you can make things better. And this works for security the same way. When people start to add into their behavior the security awareness, they can also tip you on where the weaknesses and the vulnerabilities are in your company, so you can actually act on these. So that is really something that makes security from a cost a true business driver. You can improve anything in your company to proper continuous improvement, and that is also for security. So make it a business driver by helping your people to recognize the risks of security. So if you take a little bit deeper look into OT and operations, so what could you look into for security awareness there? Where can you help people be more aware of security? Well, that really goes sometimes into simple things. For instance, the defense of your perimeter, literally. If you look into the camera protection that a lot of companies use to look into their production sites, you have to be sure that when you have less eyes on your shop floor, which, for instance, because of COVID, there also might be less eyes behind the camera. Are they even properly set up? So it is good to test that in these times. The The same goes, for instance, for external warehouses. If you make use of external warehouses, are they using the same security standards that you are using? Because, of course, people walk in and out of buildings all the time. It is quite easy to tailgate and all those very well-known examples. And what happens then, of course, is you can lose a lot of important information to loss of untethered laptops by the use of portable drives, but also simple things like the paper trails that are happening on in your company. Just think of people who are on a shop floor that are now getting more additional tasks, for instance, that are usually done by other guys that are on the shop floor. Like, for instance, you're in medication and you print out recipes that have to be produced. The people that usually do this, they also handle the proper the disposal of the paper trail. But if somebody in the shop floor usually does it, maybe he just throws those recipes in the bin. But if you throw something in the bin, that might be the same as throwing it out on the streets. So there goes your IP. So take a good look in how you can improve the security on those items as well. And the same goes for the simple things like key management. Are the offices locked where you keep keys? Are company cars and trucks, because less people on the road, are they all parked in a safe place? Because often they don't just have valuable materials in there, but there also might be printouts of your customer locations, customer information, all those things that also might be in your company cars and etc. So again, there you have a high risk of data loss if you don't take proper actions there and make the people who are responsible usually for these systems security aware. So a few things to take home there. Then to the point of ERP, just 2 slides, but we really have an interesting point, I think, here to make sure that you have a good first line of defense regarding your identities, because it's not just in IT, it's not just in OT, it's especially in ERP. There's tons and tons of data available in your ERP landscape. So be sure you protect your employees and your customers by using proper identity management. From that, of course, the authorizations are super important as well, because you can imagine that if you change your business model or ways of working because of what's going on this year, I mean, there are dozens of examples where companies are now changing. For instance, a beer brewer is changing part of their business now to producing hand sanitizers with the alcohol that they have. So if they change the products and everything, you also want to make sure that you check if your segregation duty is still on par. Your roles in the backend systems should be changed according to your business model as well, instead of giving people additional authorizations to do a new job. And this happens over and over again. People just get bigger and bigger and bigger roles, which just increases the risk of making mistakes, of course, but also of fraud. So please have a good look that your segregation of duty is on par as well. And do not skip the training of your employees when you start a new way of working. People are often bringing in brilliant ideas that can help your company move forward in this changing business that we have. But if you don't train everybody, like for instance, finance is not aware that you're making a new product, or your sales team should be aware that something happens in the way of working through finance just because you handle your documents differently. Those things are very important, and they save you a lot of time and a lot of difficulties and a lot of risks as well if you train your employees on that part. And if you do that, the next logical step is, of course, that you change the policies accordingly, beating the auditor to it, so you don't get a lot of red flags in your audit report at the end of the year, but you actually already are very aware of all the changes and you put them in your policies. One of the things that I like to finish here with is the actual strengthening of the European landscape, because often businesses think that ERP is safe behind the measurements that were taken in IT. It's the same way that IT often thinks that they can protect OT by doing the same things that they do in IT, which of course is not the way it works. Strengthening your ERP landscape as such is also very, very important, because there's a lot of data that goes in and out of your ERP landscape. So you have to be sure that everything works well, but also that everything works securely. So you can use asset penetration testing for that. The good thing, of course, that ERP being behind IT is that security patching is a little bit easier than, for instance, an OT. So make sure that your patching mechanisms are up to date. And what's very, very important, of course, please be sure that you have proper backup facilities, and not just that you make backups, but that you know that you tested them, that you know how to restore them, and that you retest them once they are restored, that you're sure that your backup facilities are usable, so that when something happens, when you have downtime, when you need to use your backup, you are resilient, and you are back in action real fast. And that's very important, because there are a lot of companies that just make backups thinking that that's enough, but they never really test their restore capabilities, and that is something that is very, very dangerous. It can cost you much more time getting your system back up running from a backup than you might even think. And what's very important, of course, is you also need to make sure that your backup facilities are properly protected. Without protection, your backup facilities are just as vulnerable as any other system that you have out there. So and if you want to rely on your backup facilities as the method to get back into business, you make sure that your backup facilities are properly protected. So a few things to take home as pointers here that can really help is when you look into, for instance, the patching of ERP, please automate that as much as possible. And there's some very good tools that can help you with that to make sure that you save a lot of time in patching. So that means that you can do patching also more often. So you keep in the same pace as the developers of your programs to bring the patches to your systems. Use proper access control to stay on top of your authorizations. As said, there's a wild growth of authorizations when even the slightest thing in your business can change, and that goes to all of the company. So make sure that you stay on top of the roles. You can save a lot of money. We have already noticed that with a lot of customers by properly using an assessment on user licenses, because there are a lot of systems there that you pay specific user licenses for. Not just ERP, you can think of specific IT and OT software as well. That really can save you a lot of money there. So have a good look into your user licenses. It's also a safety thing, because if you keep open user IDs of people that already have left the companies, or double IDs, those can be used by attackers as well. So make sure that you clean up your user licenses, and with that your user identities. And that's also why we always emphasize make use of proper identity management. Something that is also not often done in ERP is checking your code. So the programming language that is used within that. There's often thousands and thousands of lines of custom development. Those custom developments might not be secure at all. They're just programmed to do what you want them to do, but it doesn't mean that there can be malicious code in there intentionally or unintentionally, bringing risks to your system. It can be a daunting task, of course, if you look at an ERP system for big multinationals that might have millions of lines of custom code in there, but there are a few tools that can help you there that really have an insight on that with a push of the button, so they can save you months of time going through code, and actually really can help you and show you where the issues are, and also help you solve them. So there's really good tools for that. If you have interest in that, just let me know. What's important as well, which I like to always bring to this equation, is please take into account that if you do something, if you create something in your company, create it secure from the very beginning. Security by design is the new standard, and that goes for ERP, for IT items, and for OT as well. Make sure that you start with proper security when you build something straight away. Don't rely on fixing it in the end, because security is getting increasingly important and the vulnerabilities are just simply out there. So make sure that you start with security by design. And if you want to have a good vision on what is going on in your ERP landscape, you also need something like a threat detection system, so you have real-time insights of breaches that are going on. And as said, these are named enterprise threat detection systems. I think these are very important to implement if you have a serious ERP landscape as well. And it's often forgotten that you need something like that, just to make sure then you can see when something is truly going on. And that is not just from the external part. So on the cybersecurity part, that also goes for fraud. You can catch in real time often fraudulent acts that are done within the company. So just a few pointers on ERP. From this, I would like to dive into the OT part. The security challenge really here is that there are quite a lot of security threats out there that can threaten the OT landscape. Here are just a few of these. For instance, of course, there can be maintenance administrations, security items there, your OT control, the control logic that could have, whenever that can have an update, there's quite a lot of dangers of misuse there. Just think of one of the most important hacks in time, and most known hacks was the Stuxnet hack that used a Windows 0-day vulnerability to actually go down to the OT systems, crashing a lot of centrifuges through the administration systems there. But also what I think, for instance, is an interesting part on OT are the actual existing protocols that are out there that can be misused in malicious intent. Like robots on the shop floor, they all have an emergency stop system. If somebody uses that protocol in a malicious intent, they could stop the whole line, taking you hours and maybe days to get back from something like that. So there's a high risk of protocols that can be misused out there as well. The same thing for unprotected protocols in general. So how do you want to protect the protocols that are out there on systems that have a low security from the way they are built and set up? And we see that a lot in OT systems and a lot of OT networks, that there's just an easy way to get to protocols and systems because there's no protection in front of them. We will go into that a little bit later as well. I can give you an example of a good way that you can protect your existing system without actually the need to heavily update or manipulate the existing systems, but putting in a high secure layer, encrypted layer, to make sure that you can protect those protocols in an easier way, which is much more cost efficient, of course, but also it really helps in keeping the availability as you like it because you're not changing the backends. What's also important is one of the last ones here, for instance, the human-machine interface attack. Just think of anything that has a USB port. It can be used to trick any computer and thinking that there's an actual human behind the keyboard, but it's the USB device is just running a simple program that can push in code into your systems that makes it look like it's just a human using a keyboard instead of the usual fail-safes. Let's say, okay, you can't use the USB because it's a drive I don't know. It just thinks it's a keyboard. So you can actually have a way of getting in malicious code, malware, etc., into your systems without any external cybersecurity triggered. So it's really something that you want to take a good look into. Do you have the proper procedures in there as well to prevent something from that like happening? So that's the view of the actual threats. So how does a hacker actually look at your company? What is really the most important options to consider as a hacker? There are various things that you can think of that can disrupt your way of business. Loss of view, manipulation of view, denial of control, so you can't get to your machines, you can't get to your computers. Those are well-known examples, of course, and you can imagine what that all means. What I think from a security standpoint, the manipulation of view and the manipulation of control are two very interesting things here, because of course it's quite logical that a denial attack or a loss attack, you notice that straight away, but the manipulation of view is actually created that you think that everything is going fine and your input and output are everything's going well, but actually there's a lot going on. People are stealing data, people are preparing the ransomware attack, making sure that they can encrypt everything in a way that you can't get to your data anymore, whilst everything is just running as normal. And the same for manipulation of control. There's an example out there that you can think of where you have a control system on your production line that is there to check what the output of your system. For instance, you're producing something that is a cartwheel with 3 holes in it, but if you manipulate the control system to actually say, okay, 4 holes are right instead of the 3, you could actually produce something that is checked by your control system that says, yeah, it's doing well, just because of the manipulation of that system. So the output of your production line is actually something you don't want, but you're not seeing it straight away. So if you don't have any additional checks there, it's not up to the standards of your customer, and you can lose days of work, and of course some valuable resources are lost in that as well. So manipulation of human control is something to really keep in mind, how you can protect yourself for something like that, because denial and loss, of course you need to protect from that, but this is something you can notice straight away. So the attack options, it's quite interesting to have a good view of that, so you're aware of the things that could go on in your business. So if you then look at cybersecurity, what would be for us the most important things to get OT cybersecurity in our systems, in the way that we work, and get our cybersecurity to the next level? So what we think is important is these 4 things. Shield and encrypt your vulnerable OT communications. Especially the encryption can be very important. If you just can you use various wireless networks in your system, and you don't use proper encryption, you can imagine that can be quite easy to find the data packages on your going over the whole network, and you can manipulate something like that. So not just shield your network, also encrypt it. As said, proper identity and access management is something that can be found in all layers of the company, even in OT. I think it's quite interesting to see that if you have systems that usually don't rely on identity and access, so on users with role-based authorizations, you could still implement that without changing your backend with a proper tool that allows you to segregate parts of your company into identities and roles that you can give to your employees. So you're sure that you don't have any open across your company, have any open roles there or identities that can be used on all types of machines. So this is something to really take into account. There are a lot of options actually out there without manipulating too much your backend to increase security through simple identity management. What's also important, I think, is, and that's highly underestimated, is a proper asset discovery and management system. Because when a plant manager actually asks to get insight on all the assets in the business, by the time he gets that list, it's probably already outdated. So you need something that can show you in real time asset discovery, and especially in real time, this is mentioned, because if you connect, for instance, you have an engineer come in that connects a laptop, you want to know that something like that is happening. So real-time asset discovery is something that is really bringing cybersecurity to the next level. Monitoring detection is something that's almost something like a standard thing that everybody's talking about, and a lot of tools are out there that do proper monitoring and detection, but we'll go into a little bit more. That I think that it's really important to look at the protection part as well, because actively protecting your OT systems is not something that is done by all the tools, and very few tools actually we found are doing a proper way of protecting your systems actively, so preventing stuff from happening. It's great that you have a monitoring tool that can tell you something is wrong, but I'd rather have something that prevents anything from going wrong, so have the proper protection in place. And again here, as we said, in OT cybersecurity, we'll skip a few, but security by design is one of the important things as well to take into account, as if you build a new machine or you buy a new machine, the standard of the people that are delivering such machines, they might not be up to your own standards. So really hand them your way of working with security from the start so that you can implement that the minute you get something in your system. So security by design also in OT is something very important that we need to take into account. So a quick look at what we actually want to protect. So what are the levels and how do we properly monitor these? So on the left side, you see there's a segregation of IT, OT, and also already the cloud business. And you have for a lot of people, the well-known levels within your company, like device IO, SCADA, MES, and also ERP in there, where we then look at the type of monitoring we can do. So in IT, you have a lot of ways to easy monitoring, but in OT you can also connect your systems, for instance, in a security monitoring system, your SIEM system. You have proper endpoint protection, or better said, near endpoint protection. That can be brought to OT as well. And if you go into the cloud, even on using I-IoT devices, you can have endpoint protection there and proper SIEM integration. So you always on all three levels of IT, OT, and cloud, you can have a monitoring in place. So the next level in this specific monitoring through SIEM is actually go into a security operations center. That's what SOC stands for. So IT SOCs are out there. We know of them. Everybody can find them on the internet. There are a lot of companies that provision this type of service. For OT, this is rather new because, of course, OT has a totally different way of working, totally different type of networks, and totally different way of looking at security than from that standpoint as IT. But SOCs are now being built, and also ATS is implementing the service of SOC. If you take that all together, what for us that really next level is to bring that to one security operations center. So companies can really have only need to call one number. You have one partner that helps you in your monitoring of these systems for all IT, OT, and IoT all together. And that is really the next level that the ATS wants to bring on a global scale, because we already have the 24/7 services all around the globe for all the types of OT services that we provide, and we really want to build on that and provide you with the opportunity of building an enterprise SOC for you as well. So not just have a separate SOC for IT or OT and monitoring for I2, we bring that all together in one central SOC. So now that we have monitoring in place, I think what is really important, I said that, mentioned that before, the active prevention of things from happening. That is something that we really want to look into. And in IT, it's a well-known thing, but in OT, it isn't yet. So what can we do to protect our OT systems actively? So I have an example for you of some toolings. There are a few tools out there. I think this is one of the best tools that we found up to now, because next to, of course, proper monitoring of your systems, giving you the ability to respond on any threats that are actually going on your system, I actually want to shield my OT systems from anything from happening. So what the Cybersplice tool actually does, it brings in-pass security for your OT network. And it does that by bringing an encrypted overlay network, which actually is, it looks like you have an OT network out there, but it's actually a copy of that. It's an encrypted overlay network. So that has full security capabilities through multi-form authentication. So even if you can bust the multi-form authentication, which is really difficult, of course, a hacker would get on the encrypted overlay network, but still there's no way he's on the OT network like that. And since all the communications to your OT network in that side are encrypted fully all the way to the end, it's virtually impossible to break that as easily as it's currently known. It's really a very good way of protecting your OT systems. Also, I think what is a very important thing when you use something like an encrypted overlay network is that you are not manipulating any items in your OT network. You're putting in the proximity of your OT network, you're putting specific hardware the cloaks that actually facilitate the network without, so the overlay network, without changing your OT network and changing the backend of your systems, without the need of heavy patching of your systems. So your availability is just kept as you have always had it. There's no risk involved in getting a system like this up and running. And the most beautiful thing, I think, to get to know these systems is you could actually implement them. Start with a monitoring mode, so without putting it in path yet, so you can actually see the way it is working. Then you can move to an edge mode, and then you can move to an fully in path mode, as you see fit, as your trust in systems like this grow, that you can see that they won't disturb any of your capabilities in your maintenance part. So it can be really cost effective doing it that way, as I said, because you're only bringing in the specific hardware to create this security network without changing the backend. So it's a smooth transition, and the minimal reconfiguration, I think, is a definite plus there. So that is one example, I think, of a tool that really brings a next level of security to OT. And this is also something that raises a few of the questions. What we think that is a proper security tool that give you the next level of cybersecurity. I think that these three items are very important. You want an active defense, not just proper monitoring capabilities so you can do a response, but I would like an active defense of my systems. I would like something that could actually have a reduce of the risks of updating my systems, which also brings a lot of eliminating and reducing costs. And I want really to be able to see everything that's going on my networks. So I really want the next level of insight. And if a good tool can provide me that, that is very, very important. So you get real-time insights on access control, on the intrusion detection we just talked about, but also helps you in the audited trails through the proper logging outside of your network in a separate network, have a safe way of logging anything that's going on in your OT network. So you really look into all the traffic that goes on there, and all the deviations to that can be logged, and you can find everything back if need be. I think those are three very important things that you need to test the tool against to make sure that you bring in a tool that really can help you to bring security to the next level. Something that we do, of course, is find the proper toolings, find proper partnerships that can help you with that. And also, we have a survey, we like to work with assessments to unburden you on security in a way that we can show you the current state of security on all types of levels. You can see that on the left, for instance. We can look at SAP cybersecurity, Oracle cybersecurity, authorization management, but also, for instance, segregation of duties, as I spoke of earlier, roles that people use. They can grow and grow and grow, but you want to be sure that the segregation is actually on par with the all the certifications that are required. So for instance, you have to be sure, of course, that somebody in sales cannot do purchasing and all those types of things. But also on the end of OT, if you implement role management, be sure that you segregate it in a proper way, so it's both facilitates workability and security. So for that, we do different types of assessments. And we also selected a few partners that we think really bring quality security and vulnerability scanning and analysis to all the different levels of security that we want. For instance, Cybersplice, as said, for the OT cybersecurity. We use Onopsys for SAP and Oracle cybersecurity, which are, Onopsys is one of the biggest worldwide that can do that. And it also is the tool, for instance, that does that code scanning I previously mentioned, but it does a lot more. We also use the tool, for instance, to help you in bringing patching to the next level. So automate the patching and at the same time bring vulnerability analysis to your company. And these are things that are actually not just that we do. We don't force anybody to do, get us back in the system, yearly do all the assessments. It's something that we like to do, but we can also give you the opportunity to use the tools in-house yourself. So we can teach your crews in IT and OT to really have their own views on cybersecurity and vulnerabilities in your systems just by a push of the button. So this is also we can bring to the company working with these type of partnerships. So with that brings us to the questions and answers. We went through OT, a little bit of ERP. It's really important to take into account, I think, the security awareness. So please have a good look at that as well for your company. And I think that really sums up our current presentation. Sachin, do we have any questions yet?
Yes, Armand, we have received a couple of questions. I will read those out. The question one is, how do we recognize that we are under attack when everything seems to be running normal?
Okay, so we're talking about the actual example that we spoke of earlier, where we have a manipulation of view and control. That's the type of attack then there, because everything seems to be looking normal. So, for instance, as I said, in OT, go back quickly to this picture here. One of the things that were added in security and for in a lot of tools right now, and I think that Splice is doing this very well as well, is a new artificial intelligence mechanism that allows for behavioral profiling. Behavioral profiling is something that the minute that you switch on a system like this, it starts logging the activities that is going on, and it sees then what is your normal way of working. So the minute that something happens that is not within that boundary of normal way of working, the system detects that as an anomaly, and not anomaly, and it then sends out a warning to the appropriate people that you can have a look at what's going on. So even though that everything seems to be working normally from a business perspective, the system still notices if something goes off the wire there. And the same for ERP. We can do that in ERP systems as well. For instance, Unopsys has a mechanism like that as well. They have the behavioral profiling in there that allow you that as an example, if a finance person is going into the tables of your ERP system and he all of a sudden starts downloading customer data, which is totally not normal for somebody in finance maybe, that is then something that the system automatically notices as being something that is not usual for this specific type of job. So it will send out a warning to the appropriate monitoring people to act on that. So the behavioral profiling is something that in both IT and OT can help you detect if something is going on without actually, something that is really disturbing your business in any way. So you can find that out through proper behavioral profiling. Is there any else? You said there are some more
Yes.
questions?
Yes. How do you best protect against the impact of a ransomware attack?
Okay, yeah. So ransomware, of course, is very difficult to protect specifically against. You have, of course, your typical the virus scanners that are out there. They're all the companies are trying to update them with the algorithms that detect any of the known ransomware. But if there is unknown ransomware or you're on a different level that you are not able to attack that, you want to make sure that your company is properly resilient enough to actually get back from a ransomware attack. So first of all, there are the external options of bringing in the additional benefit of, for instance, an insurance. But what's really important, I think, and that's what we also talked about in this slide of ERP here, is really make sure that you have proper backup facilities. Because if you have a downtime because of ransomware, you want to be sure that you can use your backups to get back into the business. And this is why I also put in the protection part here. If you don't properly protect your backups, the first thing that a ransomware attack does is encrypt your backup possibility. So your backups are not usable anymore. So there's no way you can get back to your normal way of working. So that's why we really emphasize on protecting your backups as well. In the early example I gave of the University of Maastricht, for instance, that were attacked by ransomware, It was also a thing that they did, and that which would make it impossible for them to restore their own backups because they were not protected enough and they were encrypted as well. So a good way of defending against ransomware, next to the existing things that try and keep out the ransomware, actually, is to make your business as resilient as possible, to have proper backup facilities, protected backup facilities, and that you test your restore capabilities. That's really very important to get back from ransomware attack.
Okay. Another question is, can you elaborate on SAP cybersecurity assessment?
Okay, so I will jump to this one. So in the left bottom corner, we have cybersecurity, and I have a few examples in there of, for instance, ERP, system security, code security, interface security, and transport scanning. So these are various ways that we look at a ERP landscape, and the way that we want to do an assessment then is to truly look at all the aspects of security within an ERP landscape. So we don't just look at the identities, we don't just look at authorizations and roles, of course, depending on the depth that the customer would like, but specifically for cybersecurity, we look at the total picture of the landscape, because just looking at the ways of attack, for instance, doesn't really check if you have any risky interfaces, for instance, on your in your landscape. Existing interfaces can already be something that are responsible for data leakage, because interfaces don't just stay in your ERP systems. There are also interfaces that go out of your systems or come into your systems. And a lot of interfaces then use IDs, identities for specifically created for interfaces, and because these are not dialog logons, so no users are allowed to use these while logging into systems, they're often awarded with high authorization, so very broad spectrum roles, and this is quite dangerous. So these are a few aspects that we take into account when we look into an SAP cybersecurity assessment, to really look into the abilities of coding. Do you have safe coding? Do you have proper interfaces, and do you know all your interfaces? So we also scan all existing interfaces that are out there, so you really get a good transparent view of your ERP landscape, including all the interfaces with endpoints and users that are being used there. And we can even go as far as making sure that your transports that are going from, for instance, from test to development to production, or development, test, and production, and that they are scanned as well. So we really want to look into what packages are being sent, what's the form and function of those packages, and are they being manipulated or not. So with that, you can even detect if any manipulations of specific codes are being done in those processes, which you usually are unable to detect. So those are a few levels that we bring into an SAP cybersecurity assessment. So really to bring a full picture of security to the whole landscape, not just picking in like only authorizations or only IDs. We really want to go full out there.
So we have one more question from the audience. What solution do you recommend for automations network like PLCs and Piconet for Bluetooth? These are often forgotten.
Can you repeat that question again? Sorry.
Yes, please. What solutions do you recommend for automations networks like PLCs and Piconet for Bluetooth? These are often forgotten.
Yeah, so for the protection for OT by itself, and PLCs is, for instance, is quite interesting, because PLCs are often not developed as a secure device in itself. There are security measurements being taken, of course, to make sure that PLCs run safely, but not everything on there is often secured. I think just last month already there was something in the news that said that the specific PLCs had a company found over, I think, 3,000 weaknesses using the specific PLCs, for instance, just regarding security then, where of course the normal operations of the PLC were working perfectly. If you look at Bluetooth specifically, I would have to look into that a little bit more because there are quite some complications. So that would be a longer answer. But definitely, I think that protecting PLCs is best done, most easily done by implementing an additional tool that protects all of those devices at the same time, shielding them from and preventing misuse of these items. I think that is something that a lot of companies would really look forward to. So, and a good example for that would be, of course, using encrypted overlay network to shield your existing PLCs from, instead of manipulating each individual and different type of PLCs that you have in your network.
Yeah, Armand, I think that's all. And
Okay.
thanks a lot, Armand, for this very informative session. I think we are done for this. And thanks a lot, audience. It was really nice you having with us for this webinar. I really appreciate your time, and thank you. Have a lovely day and be safe.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.